Hello and welcome to your B News Community Update. I'm your host, Sydney Boles. Now, if you are here in Burlington, you will know that you've already voted a couple times this year, but there's still more voting left to do. It's a big year for democracy. Coming up in September, we've got our state primaries, and then in November, of course, is the national general election. And there's lots of dates to remember, lots going on, and the person here who's in charge of it locally is here to chat with us now. Town Clerk Amy Warfield, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sydney.
You hanging in there with all these elections this year?
Yeah, I think we're halfway there.
I mean, is it organized chaos? I mean, how do you organize it all in an office?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we've got a pretty good routine down, and so we've just kind of wait until we've got all the pieces in place, and then we wait until we get the actual ballots to be able to get things mailed out to people, and just kind of things go like clockwork, really.
Yeah.
From this point forward.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the state primaries that are coming up on September 3rd. What should people know?
Yeah. So basically, primaries are that we're voting for members of the party and for the positions that they want to run for. Now in Massachusetts, because we can be unenrolled as well, we get to choose one of the major parties. And this year we have Democrat, Republican, and Libertarian. So depending on which ballot, if you're a Democrat, you get a Democrat ballot. If you're a Republican, you get a Republican ballot. If you're unenrolled, you can pick between them. And so depending on which ballot you pick is going to depend on who you have on it. We have, we are for federal census, federal senator, we have, rep, and then state rep and state senator, and then a few other either district or county seats that are up. And so pretty much on the Democratic ballot, there's a full slate of people, but the only contested race is for governor's council.
Now, this is something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know that much about. Right. In this race, the incumbent is Marilyn Petito-Devaney,
yep.
And challenging her is Mara Dolan.
Yeah.
And that, I think, I'm honestly not entirely sure exactly what this does, but it's really about appointing judges, is that right?
Well, they appoint the judges. They also do any of the commission appointments that come out of the governor's office. So if, like the cannabis commission, those kinds of people, those are people that they would look at and make recommendations to the governor on appointments. So it's kind of a behind the scenes position, but it is elected. So that's why we have two people running on the Democratic side.
And then on the Republican side, there's a contested race as well, right, challenging, are the people running to challenge Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Correct,
in November.
Yeah, so there are three gentlemen that are running for that particular opportunity to be put onto the November ballot.
Okay, so that election, of course, is September 3rd. As usual, there are opportunities to vote that aren't just showing up on the 3rd itself.
Correct.
Do you want to run through those
Sure.
that information?
Yeah, so basically, if you had already mailed out a postcard or sent us a postcard that was mailed out to you, those ballots went out on Friday.
That's it. That's the vote by mail.
The vote by mail. There still is time to request a vote by mail ballot if you want to do it that way. That deadline is August 27th. And so up until the 27th, you can request one, but then starting on the 12th of August, you will be able to actually come in person and do early voting if you want to.
Okay, and then the last date to register to vote, if you want to vote in the state primary and you haven't registered yet, August 24th.
That's to the 24th, and the office is Saturday. The office will be open from 9 to 5, and we will also be doing early voting, so,
lots of opportunities.
While we're there, we might as well get as many people, help as many people as possible.
So this is really a personal preference thing. People have lots of different ways that they prefer to vote. Personally, I like to go in person on election day. I find the atmosphere is really fun. It's nice to see my neighbors. But I get the sense of it's easier. It's, you have more opportunities to vote in the office. Being there, watching people vote early, talking to folks, do you get the sense that there's that same sort of patriotic air?
Yeah, there really isn't. I think it's the difference between, because we all vote in one place, and yeah, like you said, people will see neighbors. They may not be in the same precinct, but they know other people, and you know, it's just a different air. And sometimes we do it early voting in our office. Sometimes we do it upstairs, but it's still, both places are missing that sense. The other thing that, as people get concerned about voter security, ballot security, and all of that kind of stuff, a lot of times I tell them, well, if you want to make sure your ballot is really secure, if you come in person, you're handed the ballot, you go vote it, and you yourself put it into the tabulator, so there's no questions about that.
I actually want to ask you about that. Earlier this year here in town, you took kind of extraordinary action to protect the sanctity of the vote. There were a handful of ballots that were missed in the local election.
Yeah.
And you, I'm forgetting the specific term. You took a legal action to unseal those votes and count them and make sure that everything was tip-top shape.
Right.
But it was an indication that something happened, something went wrong at this election. What is being done to make sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen again?
Well, a couple things is that we are going to use some regulation that we can now use, and basically so those ballots are secured in our vault, and that we will do what's called advanced processing. So they will be read in and processed. They will not, we don't know the totals on them.
The early votes.
We just do it as batches, and then those will be added to the day of election totals, so that we don't have to have a third step of handling ballots. And that's what happened at the town election. You know, because there was so many envelopes and ballots and which ones had been fed in, there were some that were put into a stack and sealed back up before they had been read. And so as soon as I discovered that by identifying, wait a minute, our numbers are off, you know, I went and had our attorney file for a court order so I could open that box, we could get back to them, we could read them. I had other town clerks come in and read them so that, you know, people could feel secure that yes, those ballots were found, they were read, and they're put into the total.
Right. I mean, it didn't end up changing the outcome of the election. Yeah. And I think it was a demonstration of the kind of extraordinary efforts that you went to make sure that everything was accurate.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be helpful for folks to hear that there's sort of checks in place to, you know, if there's a question.
Yeah, there's a lot of checks and balances, and that's one of the things that I strive very highly to make sure we catch those things before they become big issues, or once they appear, that we take care of them as promptly as possible.
Should we talk about November?
Sure.
All right. So November 5th, the big one, presidential election, we're talking on mere hours after Kamala Harris announced that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz would be her vice presidential running mate. It's a lot going on. We're like very much in the thick of a campaign season. The content of it doesn't really matter for your job, though. You're just there to make sure that everything runs smoothly.
Yeah.
So give us the town clerk perspective on preparing for November.
Yeah. So preparing for November, first thing is we need to get through September. We have a very tight window to be able to finish those, you know, do all the tabulation and everything, and certify for the primary, and then we turn that data around to the state, and that's then when they go and start to do the November ballots. We do have 45 days prior to the November 5th date is the date we have to have everything ready for overseas voters. Mm-hmm. So those things go out right away, and then within that time frame we'll start to get ballots. The other thing people may experience, and I know there's a lot of confusion about this, is that there will be another set of those postcards going out for anyone who has not requested a vote by mail ballot. It's the way the legislation is, they have to mail out those cards prior to every federal election. So that will also be happening. People will be getting these postcards, and then so that gives them another opportunity to request a vote by mail ballot if they want one.
And the deadline for the vote by mail application for November is October 29th.
That's correct.
To me, that seems so short, Amy. That seems like a real short window to be pushing it.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, that because right now the post office is saying any mail can take, 5 to 7 business days.
Right.
The best thing that I can say, and I really do, we work very closely with the Burlington and the Woburn post office. Our mail comes out of Woburn, so what we do is we take all the ballots directly to Woburn so that they can help us with processing them.
Okay.
So, I mean, in Burlington, I think we've got a pretty good routine and process, but yeah, it is a tight one, and I guess I would hardly encourage, if somebody really hasn't requested it by then, they could also do early in person. So if they can come in that day, we don't have to mail out a ballot, they can just vote in person and basically short-stop one of the steps in the whole process.
Right. So lots of different ways to vote, lots of dates and things to remember. All that's available on the town clerk's website, which is accessible through burlington.org.
Correct, yeah.
You are putting in the work this year for sure, Amy. Thank you for taking a couple minutes out of your day to talk to us about it. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, Sandy. Thank you.